welcome back to Mining Stock Daily. Ian Wagner here with a follow-up conversation with a Canadian rare earth developer, Defense Metals, based in Vancouver, part of the Discovery Group. Defense Metals is advancing the 100% owned Wicheeda Rare Earth Project near Prince George, British Columbia, one of the only 43101 reserve stage REE deposits in North America. Defense Metals trades on the TSX Venture under the symbol DEFN. And with us today is the president and CEO of Defense Metals, Mr. Mark Tory. Mark, thanks for coming back. Good to see you. Welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Thanks for having us back again.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot has happened. We spoke in April, so anyone new to the story, I just encourage to go back and listen to our previous episode. But a lot has happened since April. Kind of walk us through where Wicheeda stands today, what you guys are doing, what you're focused on.
Yeah, look, since April, we've completed both a winter and a spring program up on site. The winter program included some drilling that we had up there for geotechnical drilling, which was complete then. And then we had the spring program that we completed recently, where we were doing some infill drilling to look at increasing our resources, to increase our mine life from our PFS, as well as some more geotech drilling. And at the same time, obviously, we're continuing to do some additional work in relation to our environmental baseline studies and making sure that we've got all the work we need for all of that. On top of that, we also did a 30-ton pilot plant on our beneficiation side at SGS in Lakefield, just out of Toronto. That was a 5-6 week program that we did to process that. And the reason to do that was twofold. One was to make sure that our flow sheet in relation to the concentration, I was able to upgrade and go at higher levels in relation to scale. And then secondly was to produce enough concentrate for us to then go into a hydrometallurgical a pilot plant, which we will be starting shortly.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that first. The PFS, I mean, we should, mention, obviously, you guys are past that PFS stage, 15-year production plan. Some numbers around that. I think a pre-tax NPV at 8% was around $1.8 billion Canadian, post-tax about $1 billion Canadian, with post-tax IRR 18.9%, post-tax payback 3.7 years. A decent capex, right? A little over $1 billion, $1.4 billion. Within the context of kind of where you guys are at in the stage, talk about that Hydromet program and the pilot, and really what that is designed to accomplish and how that kind of moves Wicheeda forward.
Certainly. Look, one of the things with the PFS was the product that we were going to produce. So in the PFS, we were producing what's called an MREC product, which was basically a carbonate which had all of the rare earths in it, where we would then have to sell it to a separator. What we're doing through our full feasibility study is looking to build our own separation facility, whereby we would actually produce an NdPr magnet-grade oxide, and then a SEG, which is the heavies combined together to sell that to a separator. So the test work that we're going to be doing now through the Hydromet will allow us to test that process and make sure that we're going to be able to do separation as well.
Okay, so what does that do for you in terms of like your customer and your revenue? Is that increased revenue, increased product offering? Like, what is that? Is there a premium placed on that oxide? Like, why does that matter so significantly?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a premium placed on the product, but what it is you get 100% payability rather than a 90% payability or 95% payability on the product that you are actually producing. So yes, it's more revenue, but obviously slightly more increased costs and an increase in the capital. But what it does is it really expands your market base. So instead of trying to find a separator globally that's going to be able to take 5,000 tons of NdPr, which is difficult. There's not many of those globally. We actually do our own separation, and then with an oxide, that oxide market is to metal makers, alloy makers, magnet makers. So that whole base has just expanded, x-fold.
Yeah, you've certainly seen a lot in the news flow this year about the importance of magnets and just sort of that rare earth supply chain, not only here where I am in the United States, but certainly globally. Um, okay, so kind of moving to some of those assumptions in that PFS and just with that capex, what is the plan there for raising that? I know you guys, and this is probably a good segue into your government relations, right? And you guys being able to submit your project to Natural Resources Canada. Is this something where you see it as a combined debt, equity, government financing? How creative can you get, and just kind of what does that look like, or what could it look like?
Oh, there's so many different scenarios that you can put out there, Ian, and it could be a combination of everything. We've already got a $250 million letter of interest from EDC, so Export Development Bank of Canada, which we signed last year. But we would see the financing of the actual construction of the project to be a combination of, as you said, debt, equity, government funding, and that government funding, it could be Canadian government funding, could be European government funding, could be US government funding. But yeah, we'd be looking to finance it in that way. I don't think you can do it any other way besides having a combination of the three.
So with that, I mean, what are those conversations like, with the government there? And like, I know that in years past, you guys were kind of earmarked as I'm not going to get the term right, but just a significant project within the BC government, right? And maybe you can clarify what the term is. But what are those conversations like, and then how do you kind of advance this forward with them?
Yeah. Oh, look, when we talk funding and looking at the construction of the project, we're looking at the federal government rather than BC. BC, when we're on that list of, from the Critical Minerals Office of the 4 companies that are going to progress the permitting side. So that's really for us to have a concierge service to assist us going through, all the relevant government services there are there for us to make sure we can get the permit done, in a very timely fashion, and without cutting any of the corners, and with obviously continuing to keep the community involved with it. The communications with the federal government are great as well. Like we're quite high up on their list in relation to a strategic projects in Canada. We know that. We've put a couple of applications in. I know we made an announcement the other day where we put an application in for a $32 million grant with the federal government. It was an expression of interest from us. It went through a process within the Canadian government, went through some experts, etc., and it's moved to the next step, which is for us to fill out a full application. So I mean, there's no guarantee of funding or anything like that at this point in time, but it's certainly a very positive step towards, moving towards that, and now going through the detailed application process with the government itself. So, and look, and when we're talking to people in relation to the financing, in various government departments, we know there's buckets of money that are there for construction of projects like ours. So, we really feel firmly that when we get to the construction phase, there will be funds available for us.
Do you feel like that your separator still is that you have, proven and probable reserves, and that you guys are the sort of furthest along in this, or is it something else, jobs created? What do you feel like is your differentiator that you can kind of put on those highlights, or sort of when you're talking to people, either government or private investors or whatnot, to say, hey, this is why, our project should be at the front of the list?
Um, yeah, well, there's two parts to it. One, we've demonstrated the economics around it, and the main reason again for that, one, you say yes, we've got the reserves. The reason we've got the reserves is because of the economics. and the economics really revolve around the fact that we can concentrate up our grade from the ground from 2.4% up to a 50% concentrate grade. So that's our big differentiator between us and other projects. Certainly, when we talk to government, we're talking about trying to partner with the right strategic partners downstream in relation to separation, alloy making, magnet making, etc. So that there's excitement built within the government to see if we can get downstream processing happening within Canada. And even if it's not within Canada, it's associated with Canada.
You had mentioned when we spoke, I think in April, one of the things that you were looking forward to the rest of the year was working for those strategic partners or offtake agreements. You have, correct me if I'm wrong, I think a non-binding agreement with a company out of South Korea, or perhaps exploration joint partnership. Give us kind of the state of affairs in terms of offtakes. Is that something where you're looking to, well, I guess it's a two-parter. I mean, give us sort of the current landscape, but then also, is there a minimum threshold you're looking to sort of secure for offtake, or is it kind of, whatever you need to do in order to sort of secure senior debt? Or, how are you thinking about that? How do you guys like kind of, I guess just thinking about that.
Well, since the last time we spoke, we signed an MOU with Hanwha Corporation and Hanwha Ocean. Now, Hanwha was a company that was involved in a two-way contract negotiation with the Canadian government to build submarines. And obviously part of that whole deal was to look at doing business with Canadian companies. Unfortunately, about a month ago, I think the Canadian government chose the German company rather than Hanwha. But on the same day, I got an email from Hanwha, which said, even though we weren't successful, we still want to continue, the MOU, because we do want to look at, offtake financing, etc., in relation to rare earth. So that was still very positive. We obviously have the MOU with an unnamed European party in relation to offtake from the PFS. Now, given the fact that we're going to be changing our end product, that we obviously won't be looking at that product going through that an offtake through that MOU, but we're certainly looking at other options that we can do with that party moving forward. When I look at strategic partners and the way that we're doing it at the moment, we're looking at it probably from three different aspects. So one, as you mentioned, is offtake. And when we're looking at offtake, we don't have any minimums or maximums, etc., that we've got here. A lot of it will come down to what is the market and the player that we're dealing with. How much do they need?
Sure. Okay.
Generally, I mean, we're talking about 5,000 tons of NdPr. You'd be looking at trying to have a cornerstone of at least 2 million. Roughly of product going there, at least 25-30% of it, right, that you can have as a fun on the side. So that's one side of it. The second side is strategic in relation to helping us out on the technical side of things. Whether that be downstream or helping us with the Hydromet, etc. And then thirdly, the way that I look at it is government. And so, when we look at government as a strategic partner in relation to funding, potential offtakes, potential stockpiling, there's a whole lot of different things that we're talking in relation to that.
Okay. That brings up a question I probably should have asked earlier, but how much, without asking you to make any, forward-looking statements, how much do you expect as you move from the PFS to a definitive feasibility study, how much do you expect the economics around the project to change now that you are going to be using the Hydromet separation,
Yeah. Again, we haven't done, we've done some high-level numbers in relation to it. we're also looking to see, where we can potentially, shave costs off the capital as well. So it's obviously to reduce the capital costs, um, moving forward. So, um, yeah, look, I don't think we'll see, a substantial change, but
Okay.
well, hopefully we're moving towards a more positive, outcome
Okay. Okay.
in the
And then,
process. That's
yeah,
what we all work towards, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, on like this, you go through the process of doing the hydromet, you want and the separation, and you want to know kind of where that's paying off. I wanted to ask you about the price of NdPr. When I think it's pulled back to around $100 a kilogram. We had spoke around how the U.S. Department of Defense price floor had kind of affected the rest of the market. Is that still the case? You guys are using, I think, that 130-ish, 132 in your numbers internally. What are you seeing out there? Are you any, I don't know, concerns? Not maybe isn't the right word, but just what are you seeing on the pricing standpoint of NdPr?
Yeah, not concerns. I mean, you're right about that floor price, and I think any substantial contracts that will be signed these days are gonna have that sort of floor price in it, just to make sure that it's going to be surety of supply for the market that they want. So they want to make sure um, that the company they're getting it from is able to maintain supply. Um, my personal opinion of NdPr prices is they should be around the 150 dollar mark is my view. You still see companies like Adamas, Benchmark, etc. When you're looking into the 2030s, when we're looking to be in production, they're certainly up in those levels, with the demand supply analysis that they do, and they see big movements in particular in robotics, which is where a lot of the magnets are being used. And there was an interesting Instagram the other day, which we're trying to get up on our Instagram for defence, in relation to Donald Trump talking about um, robotics, and how rare earths are going to be important in moving forward in it. So yeah, it's important. It's very important.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and pricing, yeah, as I said, we worry about what the pricing is going to be in 4 or 5 years' time. I just can't see it, falling dramatically again. And the interesting thing is that we're starting to see, these companies actually do pricing mechanisms that are outside of China, which is something I've been talking about for over 10 years in rare earths. And we're seeing it now. We're seeing a European index, we're seeing a US index, and we're seeing the Chinese index. So um, I'm glad that we're seeing them through. And there is a definite
Yeah.
difference between the Chinese and the US and the European.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I was gonna ask you about what you're seeing there in terms of the difference and how, one thing I do think it is a little different for people to know what the NdPr price is or rare earth price is, right? It's a little more opaque than just going on, investing.com and seeing gold and silver or nickel even, right? It's just it is a little um not as widely quoted, widely followed, and it can be a little confusing in terms of if you're not inside the market. So
Yeah,
and it
and really you have to pay for the subscriptions to get
right.
those prices. So yeah, general Joe Blow in the public here finds it really difficult to track it, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, other price I want to ask you about. Your share price has come off since we spoke in April. You know, talk about either, any thoughts on that or why or concerns you're getting from investors, or is it just that, hey, maybe people don't know, or they just aren't understanding the project, or what do you think that might be? I know you put out, you wrote a letter to shareholders and investors, and why'd you want to do that, and what do you want to communicate?
Yeah, it's for us. I mean, the general market in relation to rare earths has been soft over the last few months. Um, And when we're looking at ourselves compared to some of our peers in the rare earth industry, we haven't done so well. And one of the reasons for that is when you have a look at it, each of those other companies had some sort of a catalyst event that has been able to push their share price. So whether it's some government support, whether it's a strategic investor coming in, something along those lines. Now, as we've just talked about here, we're working really hard towards getting that. Well, I don't think we're very far away from it. But we haven't announced it. And I think the market itself has been expecting us to have announced something, already, whether it be government, whether it be strategic partner, etc. I was a bit disappointed our announcement that we made in relation to the $30 million grant wasn't received as well as what I thought it might have been. Maybe people don't quite understand, and maybe they thought we were more progressed or more advanced in relation to discussions with the government. But everything we're doing is working towards our goals that we're continuing to say. We keep hitting goals, and we keep doing everything that we've said we're going to do. I would like, obviously, to have been able to announce something on strategic partners or government, a lot sooner. But I'm also very confident that we'll have something before the end of the year.
All right. Well, yeah. Before I let you go, I did want to ask you about your chairman, Guy de Selliers, a real heavy hitter in the mining space, 20 plus years on Solvay's board. He's probably someone who could be the chairman of almost any junior mining company or maybe any of global mining companies. Just what does sort of having him on the board say about you guys and your project, and kind of how does he lend his expertise when you guys are going through these, big high-level strategic conversations?
Well, as you say, you look at his background. I mean, he's got so many connections, in the finance world, at very high levels, and now of people that are now, heading up, places like EDC and other European, government institutions, etc., as well as relevant corporations. So whenever Guy wants to have a talk to someone with a potential strategic partner that we have, generally he knows somebody that's at the very, very high levels within those companies that he's able to send an email to and try and get in front of. So, I mean, he's been extremely important, in advancing a number of the things that we're doing on the strategic front. And it's great to have him there. I mean, his company that he also had built up, HCF Corporate Finance, they invested in Arafura in Australia, so that's where he started having a look at some rare earths outside of Solvay, and then he got asked to be on the board of Defence, and so we're very lucky that he accepted that position, and he's on board, and we're certainly utilising all of his skills, experience, and networks to advance our strategic negotiations as we move forward.
All right. Well, I think we're going to have to leave it there for today, Mark. But I appreciate you coming by and giving us an update on everything. I think we covered the big ticket items. Really appreciate you giving everybody an update on Wicheeda and where you guys are at and what you're doing. And we'll look to catch up with you again in the future.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Ian. Love to talk about it, as you know. So appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Defense Metals trades on the TSX Venture under the symbol DEFN, and that was Mr. Mark Tory, President and CEO of Defense Metals. The information presented should not be considered investment advice. Mining Stock Daily and its affiliates are not responsible for any loss arising from any investment decision in connection with the material presented herein. Please do your own research or speak with a licensed financial representative before making any investment decisions.